Hello, David Gronowski here. You're listening to A Neighbor's Choice Radio, and we're here for our seed oil survival segment of our show. That's where we look at the issues surrounding the various different health effects, negative health effects of eating these toxic vegetable oil products that people are becoming increasingly aware of. Joining me to talk about this topic with our friend and nutrition researcher, Tucker Goodrich. How you doing, sir?
I'm good, David. How are you? Thanks for having me back on.
Doing well. And I know that you are involved with an upcoming app. Maybe you can talk a little bit about it. It's called Seedy app. Can you tell us a little about Seedy app?
Well, it sounds really easy when you say stop eating seed oils, but they're unfortunately in everything. I once spent my lunch hour in the salad dressing aisle at a Whole Foods trying to find a salad dressing that didn't include seed oils. Most of them are either canola or soybean oil, and by most of them I mean all but one. I finally found one in this wall of salad dressings where the only fat ingredient was olive oil. Even most of the cream dressings, like a ranch dressing or whatever that your grandma would have made with, sour cream and buttermilk and delicious things like that, tend to be made with soybean oil. So I often get questions, can I eat this? Can I eat that? What about this stuff? And my colleague, Brian Curley, who you've talked to on your podcast, as the seed oil disrespecter, and his wife decided to do something about it and have asked me to help them out. So we have all founded a company to create an app that will go through and tell you all the foods at various different supermarkets, and then later on tell you what restaurants are offering you healthy foods, right? So when you go to the store and you look at the salad dressing aisle the way I did, you're at a Walmart or a Kroger, and the app will just tell you, okay, this is what these stores carry. This is the good foods to eat here. And we hope to do two things with this. One is obviously make it easier for people to eat this way, because not everybody is like me and going to want to spend an hour of their lunchtime in the salad dressing aisle, and I don't blame them. But also, it's a really good way to put pressure on both the supermarket companies and the food production companies, right? Because the people who manufacture food are well aware of the problems with seed oils from the perspective of the how they impact the longevity of the food products, right? So we know that they know that. We know that they've published articles in these industrial journals about, say, the harm of using seed oils as to fry French fries in. So we know that there's an audience. And in the supermarket companies and in the food production companies, what's missing is the consumer awareness of the issue and the pressure on the manufacturers. Now, 10 years back, I was involved in, helping in a small way get the whole gluten-free craze going. And I remember sitting at a party with a bunch of people who said that gluten-free would never take off. It was just too hard to make people aware of it. And, that proved not to be the case. Every major food manufacturer now offers gluten-free options. I was astonished when I was in the cookie aisle the other day looking for the cracker aisle, crackers on one side, cookies on the other, looking for some gluten-free crackers, which were right there in the middle of the cracker aisle. And I turned around and I saw gluten-free Oreos, of all things, from Nabisco. And they weren't in the gluten-free ghetto the way they used to be. They were sitting there right next to the regular Oreos, right? So gluten-free went mainstream, and all the manufacturers realized that there were people who really needed to make this change, and they were there to support us, because I'm one of those people. We're hoping to replicate that with seed oils. I think it's an even bigger health benefit for most people. But we need a way both, to make it easy for lots of people to make this change and also to pressure the manufacturers. So currently, we are looking for folks to help us out. The website is seedyapp.com to get this thing started. Some of the early drafts of it have been quite popular. It started off with PDF lists of safe foods at supermarkets, and then we did a kind of an alpha test of an app development project last year, but we've realized in order to really take this to the next level, we're going to need a little more formal support from people. So however you choose to do that, if you go to seedyapp.com, you can get in touch with us and we can see what we can do to get this thing off the ground.
What do you need? You need people to populate the what's in different grocery stores around the country and what products have what on them and stuff?
Well, we started a company and we're looking for financial support. And I can't, because of the regulations around that, I can't go into too much detail except to say that we're looking to get this thing off the ground, and people can find more information at the seedyapp.com website.
And do you, is it something that you have a goal of when it should be out?
We've got a company lined up to start developing it, and it's really exciting because they're an AI company and they're looking to add in an AI engine to it, which will do two really neat things. It'll make it a lot easier to use it when you're in the supermarket. And, you say, I'm in a Kroger's in the salad dressing aisle. What salad dressing should I buy? It will also allow us to populate the database more effectively using AI to actually find foods that meet our criteria. Now, we're still going to curate, what goes in, but it'll be a lot easier than having Brian's wife, Ashley, who's a wonderful lady, literally go out to the supermarket and go through the aisles reading all the ingredients. So it's kind of neat, and they're lined up and they're just waiting for us to get the support we need to tell them to start working.
That's great, and I think that'll be helpful for folks to have a product like that, a service they can use to navigate what is what. I've found that a lot of folks will say, "Oh yeah, I don't cook with seed oils," but they're eating tons of seed oil products and they just don't pay attention. And it.
And it's tough. I'm not going to pretend it is an inconvenience. I think it's a worthwhile inconvenience. I've talked to at this point and seen myself so many health benefits, both in me and other people, that it's absolutely worth doing. But it's unfortunately nobody's tried a project like this to try and make this easy for people.
Right. Yeah, they've got the other app that we talked to on the show recently was Seed Oil Scout, which is doing that with restaurants. What restaurants cook with what oils, so people can find.
Yeah, exactly. Similar. We've talked to that gentleman. Similar idea. He started with restaurants. We're starting with supermarkets. I think knowing what restaurants are good is definitely a help, but most people eat, they get most of their food from the supermarket. And the way supermarkets are laid out, the easiest thing in the world is to buy foods containing seed oils, because that's pretty much what most of the aisles are full of.
Uh-huh. When you talk to folks who are opening their minds to this possibility, have you noticed a continual acceleration in interest about this topic, or have you seen it kind of peak and then go down in a lull, or just continually get more and more exponentially exciting for folks who are discovering this? How do you see the seed oil awareness movement?
Well,
happening?
awareness is getting more and more, and the good indicator of that is that we're starting to see GQ magazine just did an article about how this is all nonsense, and those articles in the mainstream media are starting to become more common. And given how good the mainstream media is about science and health topics, as we all learned over the last 3 years, I think that's a great sign. They're hearing about it, they're noticing it, they're trying to poo-poo it, but ultimately the weight of the evidence and the science is on the side of this being a real health problem. And just, you know, pretending to be ignorant of the research that's been done and pretending that there's nothing happening is just not going to work in the long term, right? It didn't work for the people who said the same thing about the gluten-free movement. It didn't work when the tobacco companies were trying to poo-poo the health problems of cigarettes, and it's not going to work this time.
Yeah. And I'm still exploring, the different options as to how to help people who've been messed up by all these seed oils for decades. And that's something that I think will be an ongoing, interesting exploration, because I don't want to just pick a camp and settle down and that's it. I want to see as much as we can, what the different options are for people who have found their metabolism wrecked by seed oils and want to know, okay, what are my options for healing from this, And that's why I've been so interested to bring folks like you together with the late, great Dr. Ray Peat and Georgie Dinkov, his student, and folks like Brad Marshall and others who all have different, to various degrees, different answers as to, okay, we all know don't eat the seed oils, but then what do you do next, And I think that's going to be continually an interest of mine to help explore that, because you could say, okay, it's this team, it's keto, it's high sugar, low fat, or Brad Marshall is experimenting with lots of starches, and so forth, and different other things. And it's going to be interesting to see how these different parallel explorations and data continue to kind of create a conversation so that we can find out exactly what are the best options for people to heal from these products once they've realized they're not going to consume them anymore.
Yeah, and that's something where we need more people doing trial and error approaches, which is the fundamental method of science. Yeah. To try and figure out what supplements might help. I mean, there are certain antioxidants like carnosine in meat that helps detoxify some of the toxins that are produced from seed oils in your body. There are herbs like rosemary that has a carnosic acid, a similar name but a different chemical, that protects against seed oil toxicity. And we don't really know what the best way to heal from this is, right? I mean, the first rule of holes is when you're in a hole, stop digging. We all agree on that, but how to get out of the hole is something that we're really trying to figure out for the first time in human history right now, right? And the more people we have trying to figure it out, and the better and the more solutions we're going to get, and the better able we will be to help people figure out how to heal themselves.
What do you think about vitamin E as a way of absorbing some of the seed oil?
Vitamin E has actually been tested extensively in human RCTs, and it unfortunately, while it protects seed oils from oxidation in a jar or in a nut, when it gets in your body, it turns into a pro-oxidant, which is why the cardiovascular disease trials with vitamin E have all been failures. They found that it accelerates the oxidation of seed oils in, for instance, LDL. So that is not a good idea.
Interesting.
And now that's compared to carnosine, which in animal studies has actually been shown to protect against atherosclerotic development, and that's in probably a good part of the benefit of a carnivore diet, is because you're not only cutting back on, direct sources of seed oils, but you're getting a lot more carnosine, even if you're eating poultry or pork, which is directly protective against seed oil toxicity. It actually binds to HNE, one of the main toxins produced from seed oils, and helps your body to excrete it. So, there are definite antioxidants that can show benefit, but, we don't have a huge amount of research looking into specifically what antioxidants would be most productive in detoxifying seed oils in the body.
Yeah, it's interesting to see how folks are finding different strategies. I know Paul Saladino, who you've been on his show a lot of times. I saw he recently interviewed Georgi Dinkov, who you and I have been talking with for some time, and Ray Peat before he passed. And it's interesting to see Paul Saladino transition from a first advocating a carnivore, nose to tail meats and organs, to now when he was, you can see he's being influenced by the paradigm of Ray Peat and Georgi Dinkov, where he's incorporating lots of fruits and he's incorporating, honey and raw milk, as well as the meats and organs, but less of it, I guess, in proportion to what he was doing before. So why do you think, do you see these transitions happening? I know it's an individual, but there's other folks like him doing that as well. Why do you think that's happening? Is it just people tinkering around, seeing what works?
Well,
going from
a
one
big
thing
part
to
of it is that, carnivore is the simplest diet there is. There's basically only one ingredient on the menu. So if you've got a lot of different diet-related issues, or you don't know what your diet-related issues are, that's the simplest way to try and solve them. But it's probably not necessary for the vast majority of people to be on a carnivore diet for their whole life. Right. The vast majority of people who've lived haven't been on a carnivore diet, right? There are lots of different combinations of foods that people can eat and still be healthy. And, if you look at the healthy populations, the ancestral, what we call ancestral type populations, typically they're eating from, 10 to as little as 10 up to 30% of their food intake from animal source foods, right? From meat and fat. And the rest they're getting from a variety of plant sources, including starches and foods like honey. Now, I still think that, honey's not a little bit of honey's great. A lot of honey causes your teeth to rot. And that's not a sign of a healthy diet. But some honey is fine. Some starch is fine. Too much also causes dental decay. And we can see this clearly in the historical record, where Paleolithic people didn't have any dental problems at all until they started adding starches and sugars into their diets. And then their dental health went rapidly downhill, and then to be followed quickly by everything else. So, a carnivore diet isn't necessary for health. It's a really good starting point, and Paul's to be commended for being open-minded and saying, well, hey, these ancestral populations that he's gone and visited, the Hadza in Africa, are, much healthier than we are, but they're eating all of these things that a strict carnivore diet would tell you are unhealthy, and yet they're healthy. Yeah. So he's to be commended for being open-minded enough to change his mind and adapt and, still have that background of, okay, this is what I did that helped me so much, but, is it necessary to do for the rest of my life?
What do you think of, I think he has accepted some of the arguments that the Ray Peat crowd has said about, if you're in a long-term ketogenic diet can mess up your, can cause your cortisol to go high and thyroid to go low and maybe having increased stress in the body from gluconeogenesis, creating, so much of the glucose that your body needs that it creates, basically the conditions for having elevated blood sugar over time, even though you're not eating a lot of sugar.
There's just no good evidence to support that position. I mean, your body produces the glucose that's in your blood is produced almost entirely from gluconeogenesis already, right? And then when you add more glucose to it, your body goes into survival mode. Let's get rid of this. We have too much of it. But that is on top of a continuous process of gluconeogenesis. So, regardless of whether or not you're on a ketogenic diet, that process continues. And then supplementary glucose is just the body gets rid of it as quickly as possible. So, I've looked into this. The thyroid question, thyroid is, again, thyroid hormones go up when you eat glucose because it's involved in disposal of excess glucose, just like insulin. And in fact, thyroid hormones make insulin more effective in terms of getting rid of excess glucose. So it's a bit of a misunderstanding of the human physiology to say that a low carbohydrate diet causes your thyroid hormones to go down, and that's a bad thing. At this point, between the Atkins diet and the various protein-sparing modified fast diets like OptiFast and MetaFast, we've had millions of people on ketogenic diets for varying periods of time, right? That's not even including people who've been on ketogenic diets for epilepsy control. And there's just no evidence that it's harmful over any period of time if it's comprised of whole foods and not seed oils and a restrictive protein intake like the early medical ketogenic diet, which has now largely been abandoned. There's just no good evidence for it. And we went through this in our discussion with Georgie, and,
Yeah. Yeah. I want to look at this real quick with you. We have just a few minutes. You linked to a study on your Twitter page at Tucker Goodrich where it says, from Springer, linoleic acid suppresses colorectal cancer cell growth by inducing oxidant stress and mitochondrial dysfunction. Now, linoleic acid is that problematic PUFA that's coming from these vegetable oil products. Why would that be what they're seeing there? Can you explain that?
Well, yeah, what they said was that high amounts of it are so problematic that it kills off the cancer cells, and lower amounts of it cause the cancer cells to proliferate, right? There was a really interesting study that I saw years ago, back to the ketogenic diet. And by the way, I don't think it's necessary for anybody to be in a ketogenic diet long-term unless you have a medical condition that you're looking to control, like epilepsy. Intermittent ketosis is more than sufficient. But in this ketogenic diet, they used seed oils, and then they used radiation to, after they'd saturated the body with linoleic acid, they used radiation to dose the cancer tumors, and radiation causes the linoleic acid to break down into toxins, just like, that's what causes sunburn. And it was an effective treatment at killing the cancer cells off, right? So it's kind of a funny thing. Just, if you're taking something that at low doses causes cancer and high doses can cure cancer, what does that really tell you, right? It tells you that at high doses, it's so toxic, it kills off even cancer cells, which are resistant to a lot of toxins and are specifically resistant to what we call oxidative stress, which is the toxicity caused by excess consumption of linoleic acid. But that at lower levels, it's actually stimulating the cancer cells, right? So
what levels are most people eating that PUFA levels at,
Well, given the massive increase that we see when a population translates from an ancestral diet that doesn't consume any seed oils to an industrial diet that consumes lots of them, cancer rates go up. Lots of these ancestral populations have virtually no cancers. None of the cancers that we call the cancers of civilization, like colon cancer, breast cancer, lung cancer. So if you look at the numbers, one could argue, and I have argued, that the vast majority of cancers that people in industrial countries actually die from are related to seed oil consumption.
Very interesting. Tucker, I always appreciate your thoughts and comments and contributions through the course of this program. It's always great to have you share with us your wisdom.
And thank you so much for your continued support, David. I really appreciate it. You're doing God's work here.
Well, thank you, and we'll continue to follow your work with great interest, and exciting to hear about your new endeavors with Seedy app and other things that you've got going on. In the meantime, you can follow Tucker Goodrich at Tucker Goodrich on Twitter. You can also go to his blog, yelling-stop.blogspot.com. It's always a great place to learn and grow and see the different nutrition studies that Tucker analyzes and talks about. So again, thanks for Tucker for coming on. That's it for A Neighbor's Choice. You can email me hello@a-neighbor's-choice. That's hello@a-neighbor's-choice. I'm David Gronowski. Godspeed.